Hi there. Today we'll be talking about some of the foundational figures in the field of religious studies, all of whom made their contributions from disciplines other than religion. And this will show us in some ways how it is that religious studies is best understood far more as a field of study than as an academic discipline. And we'll talk briefly about what I mean by that as we will see it throughout the semester. First though, what's religion? Notoriously difficult to define for one thing. When things are hard to define, I like to look to the etymologies of the word, and religion is a good word for this. Words have histories, just like people, and just like people, their histories can often offer us a window through which to better understand their present lives. So, as a word, religion has a contested etymology. The most common root to which the word is traced is from the Latin religare, and this means most literally to bind again. What we call religion is, among other things, a binding phenomenon, the ties that bind or the commitments that are operative in our lives. So, in short, commitment will work as a handle for this first root. Another root, less championed but argued for by none other than Cicero, Roman politician, rhetorician, author, whose name, incidentally, is a nickname meaning chickpea or garbanzo bean, which he got with reference to a large mole on his nose. According to this etymology, the root religion comes from another Latin root, religere, meaning to read perpetually or intensively, not just again, but in a kind of non-stopping sort of way. And we can see this as referring to the way that religion functions as a lens through which we read or see or understand the world. So, worldview. Religion is both of these things. It is commitment and it is worldview, what we intentionally dedicate ourselves to, as well as what we unintentionally see our lives through. Now, the major figures in religious studies that we'll look at today were all at work, as I've said, in other disciplines: economics, politics, philosophy, psychology. This speaks to religious studies' relative youth. When these scholars were working, there was no separate discipline known as religious studies. The study of religion generally happened in the discipline of theology, and we'll talk about that next time. But the men, and they are all men, ladies, your work is cut out for you. Religious studies, like nearly all studies, will benefit from ever more serious and influential contributions from women. The men we will turn to today were not theologians. From within their own disciplines, they saw that religion was an operative force that needed to be addressed if they were to understand culture. Now, what these figures have done is set the stage or lay the groundwork for what would become religious studies. And one thing that their varied backgrounds shows us is, again, that religious studies isn't so much a discipline as it is a field of study where various disciplinary methodologies come together and are employed in an effort to understand those cultural phenomena that are religious. Now, looking briefly at these figures will help us to start to build a toolbox, which we'll be able to use as we approach religions of the world throughout the semester. Now, the first of these figures is Max Weber, 1864 to 1920. Religion was tangential to Weber's primary interest, which was the rise of capitalism in the West. What he studied was how culture was shaped, and what he found, working mostly from the field of economics, was that shared cultural conceptions of the sacred, and he talked mostly about gods because he was looking mostly at Christians. These cultural conceptions shape concrete actions and social relations. Most specifically, what he saw was that Protestantism led in discernible ways to the development of capitalism. The Protestant work ethic, as he called it, created a culture where hard work was privileged above all else, but where excesses in spending were seen as decadent and associated with Catholics. So people worked, but they didn't spend. And what this left them with was capital, or money stored away. Now, his thesis is compelling, and though it's been challenged, it hasn't been displaced. He also said that industrialization was creating a disenchanted world where we're all increasingly bound in the iron cage of a rational bureaucracy. So there's that. Next is Friedrich Nietzsche, 1844 to 1900. I'm guessing that many of you recognize this guy. His concern wasn't economic, it was aesthetic. And he is one of the most misunderstood figures in the development of religious studies. Most of us know that he said, God is dead. And so we think of him as, at base, a nihilist. But he was, of all the folks we'll look at, perhaps the most fanatically pious. When he said that God was dead, what he really said was God is dead in the eyes and hearts of his contemporaries, that God is dead and we have killed him by too rigidly institutionalizing our capacity to be spiritual. Nietzsche would have us burgeon, always, creativity and growth in all spiritual, artistic, and social matters. That was Nietzsche's commitment. That was his plea. Now, as much as Nietzsche saw the religious or spiritual impulse as a potentially great good in human life, Karl Marx, 1818 to 1883, saw that the impulse was a weakness, one that left us as individuals open to oppression by those in power. Marx was extremely critical of religion, seeing it primarily as a human construction with overwhelmingly negative effects. He saw that the ways that religion, sanctioned the status quo, keeping the oppressed down by convincing them that there was an otherworldly reason for or reward for their this worldly oppression. He famously said that religion was the sigh of the oppressed creature, the opiate of the people. For him, religion was useful, but only as a tool for those in positions of power to keep their power. Another figure who is extremely critical of the role of religion in the life of humans is this one, whom I'm guessing most of you are familiar with. Sigmund Freud, 1856 to 1939, developed the practice of analytic psychology or psychotherapy in order to treat what he saw as the neuroses of his patients. In this endeavor, he found himself compelled to address the role of religion in the life of people, and what he determined is pretty bleak. For Freud, as for Marx, humans invented religion. Now, why would they do such a thing? According to Freud, religion was created as a form of wish fulfillment, and for Freud, the secret of religion's strength lies in the strength of those wishes. What wishes? Well, we wish we had the courage or opportunity to be good people. We wish to believe that a beneficent, if incomprehensible other, a father figure, would come along when we stumble or fall short and help us out. We wish that behind the danger of the natural world lurked a sense of cosmic kindness. For Freud, all such wishes were infantile projection, a collective delusion. Any healthy, mature person, according to Freud, would never buy into such delusion. And here's the last one we'll look at here, Carl Jung. 1875 to 1961, Freud's student, friend, and sometimes adversary. For him, the picture's not so bleak. Jung's reading of religion was far more generous than was Freud's. He was more inclined to see genuine value and meaning in the religious commitments and expressions of people. Religion, for Jung, was a great repository and expression of what he called the collective unconscious, a kind of pool of genetically transmitted wisdom carried from generation to generation. Religion tells stories of archetypes, or models of human ways of being that are common across cultures and throughout time, and that we're naturally responsive to. Unsurprisingly, Jung concentrated on the mythic dimension of religion, where archetypes such as the sage, the crone, the hero, the father, the victim could be enfleshed in story. Psychotherapy was, for Jung, itself a religious pursuit for both the patient and the therapist, and the more mythically educated a person became, the more fully that person could live with integrity and meaning in this world. The more mythic models we have in our arsenal, the more purposefully we can act into situations that life presents us with. So these are some very early figures, each of whom approached and understood religion in a different way, and all of whom worked from disciplinary fields other than religion. Next time, we'll turn to another set of influential figures concentrating on the transition from theology to what we now call religious studies.